Well, Donald Trump is now the president of the United States. So we are going to be taking a look at the astrology chart to get an idea of what we're going to be facing here in the first few months of his presidency. And the reason why I'm talking about the first few months of the presidency is because there's a lot of difficult transits that are occurring. If you've seen some of my previous videos, I do feel like between now, as of January 20th, when I record this video, and March 29th, there's some sort of catalytic event that's happening very soon here. And I feel like it's going to bring a lot of change to the country, and it's going to be a very catalytic kind of moment, and we're all kind of being set up for that. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today using astrology. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I practice Vedic sidereal astrology, my own interpretation, of course. Vedic sidereal astrology, it comes from ancient India. And if you're interested in a private reading down below, please book a Zoom reading with me on Calendly. That's down below. And also, I do recorded audio readings. If you just email me, I can set that up for you. By the way, this astrology readings for entertainment purposes only. All these statements about Donald Trump, this is my interpretation of the astrological energies. So let's go pull up the chart here for a moment. I kind of got the slide ready. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the Vimshatari Dasha. And then we're going to look at the Jaimini, the Chara Dasha, and then we're going to look at a few transits that are happening, which are kind of adding a lot of impetus to this. I feel like there's going to be a lot of high energy the first 3 months. And I don't feel like it's going to be one of those, um, I feel like it's going to be very difficult kind of a few months. One of the things I noticed, and you all can comment down below if you kind of noticed too. I feel like this inauguration felt a little different. I felt like there was this idea of, like, even though Trump is perceived as this somewhat divisive figure, at least that's the way he's been portrayed by a lot of people, is there's this idea of circling around the wagons, of trying to bring some sort of unity, which this took place with the whole, like, when we think about the recent TikTok situation where they literally banned it the day before, and there's this 12-hour shutdown, and then he brings it back for 75 days apparently. And I kind of had this feeling of, like, are they just trying to kind of get everybody unified because they know something's coming? So that was kind of my feeling about this, because he's meeting with all the tech heads. He's meeting with, he's got Elon on his team. All of the big tech heads were at the inauguration, front and center. And there's this kind of idea of, like, okay, wait, are they trying to rally around something? And they're kind of trying to get everyone unified there. So that's something I want to point out. I don't feel like it's going to be quite that simple, though, based on the astrology. The Vimshatari Dasha is what we're going to talk about first. That's calculated over here with the computer program. He's in a Jupiter Venus period right now. Jupiter Venus. Let me write that down. And now the Jupiter period's a larger period, so we're not going to focus on that too much, because these Mahadashas are very long. But I will bring this up about Jupiter. Jupiter, it does rule the eighth house over here. So when I talked about there's this eighth house energy, I mean, it's already being activated. It's somewhat, activated or kind of dormant there with Jupiter being there. Jupiter is a difficult planet for Leo ascendant. So, the eighth house energy can be like sudden, shocking things, transformative things. It's one of the evil houses. It's not usually transformation through, taking a vacation. It's transformation through very hard and difficult circumstances. That's what it usually represents. Let's focus on the Venus period. So Venus period, that is from September of 2024. I just want to write the dates for you. September of 2024 to May of 2027. So for all intensive purposes, May of 2027, I wrote that wrong. For all intensive purposes, he's going to be in this Venus period for all of 2025, all of 2026. That's why we're going to be using the Chara Dasha as well, because that gives us a little bit more detail. When the Chara Dasha is like only like 8 months, till the next change. So we'll be talking about that in a moment. So Venus, let's talk about that. It's in the 12th house. That's why, when he got elected, it just seemed a little odd because, Venus being in the 12th house, it's not very strong. The 12th house represents expenditures, losses. So right away, it does make me feel like even though he may have all these bright ideas about, Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, we're making all these changes, we're cutting taxes, we're kind of like we're doing the cut taxes, it kind of reminds me of the Reagan thing, kind of song and dance. And it doesn't feel like it's going to like it's not going to be as successful as he may think it's going to be because the 12th house it still represents losses. Okay. And a lot of the leaders are Leo ascendant, by the way. So when we're going to be talking about the Saturn transit in a moment, this is going to be affecting several people in his cabinet all at once. So I feel like this is really important. So we got Venus in the 12th house, which already kind of represents expenditures, kind of losses. And then we got Saturn there. And Saturn for Leo Senate rules the sixth house. The sixth house represents debt. Now, it can represent conflict, and 12th house does represent foreign lands. So that's the other thing. And we're going to see in a moment. So we know Venus, this backstop of Venus being in the 12th house, foreign countries, Saturn's there, conflict. We know that's in the background all of 2025. When we look at the Chara Dasha, what we're going to look at in a moment, he's going to be earning a period very soon here where Mars is activated. So it's almost like, the conditions are kind of setting up that there could be some sort of conflict or difficulty in international foreign policy. Now, I'm going to tell you in a moment why I think this is going to be like really very very soon here in the first quarter of his presidency. I feel like it's going to hit the fan a bit. I'm going to explain that in a moment, but let's talk about the chart also. We'll get there in just a moment. So just so you all know, let's pull up the slide for a moment. So we got the Vimshatari Dasha. Remember Jupiter, it's the major period, so it's really long, 2016, 2032. We have Venus, September 2024, May 2027. So that's active. Remember, we saw issues with that. Venus is in the 12th house, losses. It's next to Saturn. Saturn rules the sixth house. There could be conflict, there could be difficulty. Even relationship wise, because Saturn's the seventh lord, but I'm not really too focused on that. So he's got to be careful about his relationship with Melania, obviously, but I don't think that's going to affect the international affairs. Well, I hope not. Let's go to Chara Dasha, which is the Gemini astrology. So let's go look at that for a moment in the astrology chart. Now, the thing about Gemini astrology is it usually is, with the Vimshatari Dasha, when you enter a new Mahadasha or Antradasha, you might not really see any big changes around that date. It's more of like a consciousness shift, and then it takes a while for the physical manifestation of events to kind of arrive in your life. With Gemini, it's a little more concrete. It's like the date changes and boom, like really quickly, it's really about nuts and bolts. That's what Gemini's focused on. It's like the physical circumstances of your life. That's what it's trying to predict. Like, okay, what can we physically predict? That's what Gemini's all about. So let's go to back to the slide here, which I can't, I couldn't figure out on the computer for a moment. So Chara Dasha, and I need to scroll down for a second. So he's in Cancer Virgo right now. In Chara Dasha, it's signs, not planets. So that's the thing. He's in this Cancer Virgo period, but I'm not going to focus on the Virgo because he's literally leaving this Virgo period February 11th. Okay. I'm focusing on the next period, which is Cancer Leo. So I want to write that down. Cancer Leo. And that starts February 11th. And mark that date because that's when there could be some intense things going on. That's why I feel like I'm seeing the Dasha change or the Chara Dasha change right away when he gets in. He got sworn in on the 20th. Now by the 11th, he's already entering a new Dasha where Mars is being activated. Okay. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So the Cancer Leo, again, we're going to focus more on the Leo aspect just for the brevity of the video as well. But Leo, it's going to last until October of 2025. You see how that's a smaller period than the Vimshatari Dasha? So that's only like a 9 month period versus like a 3 year period that we were talking about with the Venus period. So this is going to give us a little bit more. Okay, what's going on here? What are we worried about? Then we have transits on top of that. You'll see, like the more and more you study astrology, the more and more you realize it's like very complicated. Everything's complicated with astrology. So let's focus on the Leo. So that's between February 11th going all the way into October. Okay, so that's what we got to know. This is activating. So the sign of Leo is activating. Now, this is his ascendant, but Mars is there. Okay. Now, Mars is Yoga Karka for Leo Senate. It's not a bad planet for Trump, but Mars, what it can do is it can cause issues. Mars can cause conflict. Mars can be there. We already know in the Vimshatari Dasha, he's in kind of this period of losses. There's some strained international stuff going on. And then Mars is kind of like, okay, we're making some moves. We're making some moves. And it might we have to look at these systems together. The moves might not be the best idea because we're going to see the Saturn transit. So we're definitely making some aggressive moves here with the Mars being activated. Okay, that's going to be in February. So if you think that this presidency is going to be like, oh, it's just going to be more of the same, we're just switching from president to president. No, this one is going to be intense. This one's going to be like he gets in, and then everyone's getting shocked that he's actually doing all this stuff. Like, whoa, this is crazy. He's doing all this stuff. He's like signing all these executive orders. What the heck is happening? I don't know. So that's kind of what's happening there. So February 11th. So right away, boom, February 11th. But even before that, and we're going to talk about this right now. Let's talk about the Mars transit going in the Gemini. This is even before this. So let's go talk about, let me pull up the slide just for a moment. So Leo Daza, we kind of covered it a little bit. Now the first house is there's total publicity on him. Okay. It's all about the self. It's all about him. He's got to be careful about his health during this period with Mars being activated in the first house. Cause he's going to have Saturn in the eighth house. So he's got to be careful with his health in 2025. That's going to be a big thing. Okay. He's going to have to be careful with that. So if you look at these important dates at the bottom of the slide, this is what I want to focus on. If you notice, it's kind of like boom, boom, boom. There's three really important dates right in the beginning. We kind of went to the Leo Chara Dasha where Mars is being activated. So we see a lot of fast movement forward, a lot of pushing forward. By the way, Mars in the first house, it does aspect the eighth house with its eighth aspect. So this can be intense stuff going on. Okay. But let's talk about January 21st, 2025, all the way to April. So look at this. It's all this first 3 month period that I feel like is going to be really intense. So January 21st to April 2nd. Okay. And you notice the Mars in Gemini is coinciding with the Saturn's going to be changing into the sign of Pisces. So let's pull the chart up. Now Mars in the Gemini, it's retrograde right now. Remember, it's been retrograde, so it's going back into the sign of Gemini from Cancer. Let's pull that up. All right, so it's going back. Mars is here at the moment, but literally tomorrow, January 21st, as of the making, this video is gonna be posted on the day that it happens, but it's going in the Gemini. Well, you're probably thinking like, why is that a big deal? It's going into his 11th house. I mean, that normally wouldn't be like a big deal. Like, so what? But we got to look at the moon chart here. Okay. Remember how I said things are like complicated with astrology. You got to look at a lot of stuff here. Let me see if I can pull up the moon chart. Well, anyways, the moon chart it's over here, and my picture might be blocking it a little bit, but essentially this is eighth houses from moon. Okay. And there's a lot of astrologers that think the transits are actually more important from the moon, by the way. But I use both. Okay. I look at both the D1 chart and the moon, but there's some astrologers that say you look at transits from the moon. So we have Mars going into the eighth house, sudden shocking events on that starts January 21st. Eighth house can be like shocking change, even emotional upheaval. It's just general upheaval that's happening. And then on, remember, what was it? On February 11th, he's entering Leo, Chara Dasha in Gemini. Mars is being activated there. Okay, so we got Mars. We already have the foreign connection with the Venus and Tardasha. I know this is getting really complicated. And then we have the Saturn transit. Okay, so let's talk about that. And I feel like all this eighth house activity, now that's the thing about astrology. You want to look at, is this repeating in multiple different perspectives? Is this either like being, is it like the eighth house is being activated by transits? Is it being activated by how many, because if it's just one transit, maybe you could just say, well, there's some transformation going on. Maybe it's kind of more mundane. But if you're seeing all these factors like eighth house, Mars, by the way, Mars and K2 are the lords of the eighth house. So that's why the Mars being activated with the Chara Dasha is important. So let's go ahead and talk about the Saturn transit because that's kind of the kind of like boom, boom, boom here with all these transits happening is the Saturn transit. This is the one that makes me really feel the Saturn transit. This is, what they used to call the big kahuna. This is really a big kahuna. Let me tell you, when Saturn changes signs, it stays in a sign for 2.3 years. It's in the ancient times, it was considered the outermost planet because it was the one that you could see with your naked eye, essentially. Now, when they had telescopes, that's when we found Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. But before it was just Saturn. So that's why in traditional Vedic astrology, they just use up to Saturn. Okay, the seven planets, along with Rahu and Ketu, which are not physical planets. Well, Saturn's in the eighth house. It represents some sort of crisis. Okay. It's a crisis. And I mean, that is the interpretation. I mean, in my book, there's always a crisis that is emerging right at the beginning of the transit. Okay, right at the beginning of the transit. And then what Saturn does is Saturn freezes things. This transit is happening for everyone that is Leo ascendant. We already know there's like multiple politicians' charts that are Leo ascendant. I keep hitting this home because it's not just Donald Trump's chart. Because Donald Trump with Saturn in the eighth house, it could be a personal crisis. Okay, that definitely could be something that gets brought up. But Saturn is also it's going in the eighth house of JD Vance's chart. It's going to be eighth from Moon in Elon Musk chart because remember we look at the ascendant and Moon, and then even with somebody who's not related to the cabinet but Governor of California Gavin Newsom, we just looked at his chart. His it's going eighth house. So I'm like looking at this going, okay, there's a lot of people where Saturn is entering the eighth house. And then, like I said earlier in the video, I feel like they're kind of like circling the wagons right now. It's almost like you might remember just a few months ago, there was the object sightings they were having on the East Coast. That was kind of strange. People were reporting kind of strange things. And then, we had these wildfires. And it's kind of like it almost the feeling intuitively, my gut feels like there's kind of something like, okay, is there this other shoe that's about to drop here in the next couple months? Now, the nature of the crisis, this is really interesting. Now, Saturn's going to be entering the sign of Pisces. The Pisces is a very mysterious sign. Okay. So there's a few things we could look at with Pisces. And Pisces is a natural 12th house when we're trying to get a profile of, okay, if there's a crisis, where's this from? Okay. Well, water could definitely be involved because Pisces is a water sign. So something from the ocean, water, floods, things like that. A Pisces also represents mysterious things. So this whole thing about like these mysterious objects, seeing these on the East Coast, there might be more of this kind of activity happening. There might be, like people have speculated, what if there's some sort of strange events where, there's this kind of emergency where we don't know what's going on, what's all these objects in the sky or something like that. But Pisces is a very strange sign. And Pisces represents outer worlds. It represents the astral realm. It represents like the things that are behind the veil, so to speak. So there's definitely this idea of, and also it can represent secrets, by the way, the secret of reality that we're not aware of that's being revealed to us, and there's a crisis. So I feel like there's a crisis. I do feel like when I'm looking at Trump's chart, I do feel like there's a definitely like a vibe of a conflictual vibe because of the Mars, the eighth house, the 12th house. And we know there's a lot of unresolved things happening internationally. So I feel like the next 3 months, we got to be really on the lookout for those things. But I do feel like when Saturn changes signs, for everybody, that's usually a lot of karmic lessons that are coming. So we'll see. I feel like this is going to be one of those presidencies. He gets in and boom, the last presidency, you may remember, he was in for a few years before, what ended up happening in 2020. But I feel like the crisis is going to be in the beginning. It's going to be like that first year that he's in is that we're going to be just in for a really wild ride. So anyways, let me know what you think down below, and I will be seeing you all in the next video. Definitely leave some comments letting me know what kind of other videos you want to see. Until then, take care of yourselves.